What's up, friends? We are back at you here at Barely Qualified Picks with our Week 7 NFL picks. As I think most of you know, we're coming off a great Week 6 where we went 3-0 in our first week of Uncle Denny's Any Given Sunday Hunches. We'll talk more about that in a moment, and then we'll get to our battle with Gerald the Coin, where we kicked the shit out of Gerald last week, and we are aiming to do the same again this week by leveraging our intellect and analysis of the NFL, whatever you consider that to be, to beat the coin and have another positive above 500 week as we look around the NFL. But first, I want to talk about injuries. On Sunday, Fred Warner went down for the San Francisco 49ers, and as I'll talk about in a few moments, I think that might be the straw that broke the camel's back in San Francisco this year. Injuries are devastating. They are predictable, but they are also, by far, the most discouraging part of professional football. They not only happen and happen frequently, but in the NFL, where the margins between winning and losing are thinner than thin, injuries have the potential to turn a matchup on its head and swing the prospects of an entire season in an instant. In aggregate, over the course of a season, the volume, frequency, and severity of injuries an NFL team faces has historically had an outsized impact on their results. Do well with the injury bug and get healthier than expected, generally you're going to overshoot your preseason win total expectations. Get bit particularly hard by the injury bug, most teams in that scenario undershoot their preseason win total expectations. There is usually a pretty strong correlation when we look back at the end of the season between injury luck and results. And those trends in the NFL bore out last year in 2024. According to the fine folks at Sports Injury Central, where they make it their job to track team and player health trends across the NFL, NBA, MLB, and more, the 5 most and least injured teams in the NFL in the 2024 season included, in the most injured column, the 5-12 Panthers, the 6-11 Niners, the 4-13 Patriots, the 5-12 Saints, and the 8-9 Dolphins. On the least injured end of the spectrum, they gave us the least injured team, the 12-5 Ravens, then the 8-9 Falcons, the 14-3 Vikings, the 14-3 and Super Bowl champion Eagles, and the 10-7 Broncos. I mean, how stark is that delta? A total of 28 combined wins from the 5 least healthy teams in 2024 versus 48 wins combined for the 5 healthiest teams in 2024. Our friends at Football Outsiders developed their own metric to measure team-level injury impact called adjusted games lost, which spit out the following results for the past few years. Looking at 2024, the 3 least injured teams were the Ravens, 12-5, won their division, playoffs. The Eagles, 14-3, won their division, won the Super Bowl. And the Bears, 5-12, fourth in the division, anomaly. The most injured teams were the 49ers, 4th place in the division, the Raiders, 4th place in the division, and the Panthers, 3rd place in the division. In 2023, the trend held again. The least injured teams were the Rams, 2nd in their division, made the playoffs. The Raiders, 2nd in their division, made the playoffs. And the Bengals, who didn't make the playoffs but did finish 9-8 in a very crowded wildcard race. And the most injured teams were the Texans, anomaly, 10-7, won their division, made the playoffs. The Patriots, 4-13, finished last. And the Panthers, 2-15, finished last. And finally, in 2022, we saw the theme hold one more time. Steelers, 9-8, didn't make the playoffs, but the Jags, 9-8, won their division. And the Chiefs, 14-3, won their division. The most injured teams, the Broncos, 5-12, last place. The Titans, 7-10, second place. Bad, AFC South. And the Rams, 5-12, third place. It's pretty telling, right? Health seems like an aspect of the game worth heavily investing in. But what if those trends don't always hold? This year has been a wacky one in the NFL, and one of the latent dimensions of that wackiness is injury luck in the first third of the season. And according to our friends at The Big Lead, the 5 teams with the most players showing up on injury reports this far include the San Francisco 49ers, not a surprise, but 4-2. The Dallas Cowboys, 2-3-1, and then 3 teams at 4-2, the Cowboys, the Bills, the Lions, and the Eagles. Now that's surprising, isn't it? It's not totally upside down, though. The 4-2 Broncos are so far the healthiest team in the league. Let's see if those trends hold through the rest of the year or if this is just a 6-week anomaly. Whatever the impact injuries have on a team, luck truly is a huge factor when it comes to injuries overall and the outcomes that a team has year to year. Every NFL team has an entire staff of trainers, nutritionists, and other professionals dedicated to maintaining player health and performance. But it's not just how well a medical and training staff can mitigate injuries. It's where you get hit, who you have in the wings, how they play when they're given their opportunity, who you're matched up against in the weeks where you're not having your best players, etc. And it's why the Carolina Panthers have such a conundrum on their hands, a positive conundrum, with Chuba Hubbard returning after missing 2 games due to a calf injury. Hubbard was arguably the brightest spot last year and this year on an otherwise dismal-looking Panther offense. Things looked bleak for Carolina as they prepared to weather the storm when Hubbard went down. But Cowboys castoff and Hubbard's backup Rito Dowdle has been amazing. He's racked up 389 rushing yards and 84 receiving yards with 2 touchdowns over the last 2 games, 200 combined yards in each game. Talk about a substitute teacher. Now, Carolina has both the privilege and the challenge of figuring out how to keep both of those backs happy in a 2-headed monster scenario, rather than seeing them both unhappy with their touch count and their ability to get into a flow in splitting the load. That's a problem Carolina is going to welcome, though, as they look to build on their current 2-game win streak and get above 500 for, believe this, the first time since October 17th, 2021, when they fell to 3-3 after a loss to the Vikings. Now, inversely, the context is also key in understanding why the loss of Fred Warner, despite all the other injuries the 49ers have suffered, could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. The Niners continue to have the worst injury luck ever, seemingly season after season. And while they've weathered it admirably this year, leaning on journeymen like Matt Jones and a beaten and broken Jawan Jennings to get to 4-2, every team has a limit, and I fear the straw has broken with the loss of one of the top 3 to 5 defensive players, some may say the top defensive player in the entire league in Fred Warner, who went down on Sunday with a season-ending ankle injury. Even in a year where the injury bug doesn't seem to be having the same negative effect on results as most years, if you love the NFL, you hate to see every injury, and none more than Fred Warner on Sunday, even for a Seahawks fan. All right, now with that, let's move on to Uncle Denny's Any Given Sunday Hunches. Just as a reminder, I do not have deep data that is driving any of these. These are strong hunches from somebody that's watched a lot of football. I could be right, I could be wrong, but so far we're more right than our prior approach, so we're going to keep it going. And as we move on to our sophomore segment, we're going to start with Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots, who are 6.5-point favorites, and I believe are going to do a 360 windmill dunk on the once again in transition Tennessee Titans. Now, the Pats and Titans are both relying on a young quarterback to earn his stripes this year, and that's about where the similarities end from my perspective. Can you believe that it had been 199 consecutive weeks since a team not named Buffalo has been in first place in the AFC East? The Pats are now 4-2, winners of 3 straight, and are in sole possession of first place in the AFC East thanks to their 23-20 road upset of the Bills a couple of weeks ago. New England has won 2 straight on the road and can make it 3 straight with a win at Tennessee. Winning 3 straight games, all on the road, hasn't happened in the NFL regular season since the Patriots did it themselves to end the 1961 season. This seems like a prime spot for some more NFL history from the Pats. New England is 6th in passing offense. They're 11th in scoring offense, though they are just 25th in rushing offense. We all know that Ramondre Stevenson has talent, but he has got to stop fumbling the ball, and they've got to give it more to Travion Henderson. The Pats are also 4th in rushing defense, though. 24th in passing defense, but they are able to do a good job on the ground in that front 7. Meanwhile, 1-5 Tennessee would arguably be the worst team in the league this year if it wasn't for the trusty Jets. But make no mistake, the Titans were still really bad before they fired head coach Brian Callahan this week. Tennessee is 26th in scoring defense, 25th in rushing defense, 31st in rushing offense, and 31st in scoring offense. That is not a great formula for success, as evidenced by the Titans' results thus far. But if we're looking for a silver lining, the Titans are 11th in passing defense, so they'll at least have a strength on a strength when New England has the ball. So, can the Titans slow Drake May, Stephon Diggs, Hunter Henry, and the rest of New England's hot air attack? Can Tennessee establish some semblance of a running game with Tony Pollard against New England's soft run D, so Cam Ward isn't facing 3 and long after 3 and long? When Cam Ward is in those third and long situations, can Calvin Ridley break through a New England secondary that has only allowed one 100-yard game from a wide receiver this season? Tyreek Hill, you might have heard of him. I'm going to give the edge to the Pats here. And while the players on the field are definitely the most important factor in determining the outcome, just how motivated is Mike Vrabel to exact a bit of revenge on the Tennessee ownership? And how motivated are the Pats players to help him get that done? I think quite a bit. Edge, Pats. In our second hunch of the week, the Jekyll and Hyde Carolina Panthers are 1.5-point favorites to rack up their first road win of the year over the lowly Jets in the Meadowlands. Like a tried and true Jekyll and Hyde team, the 3-3 Carolina Panthers have actually looked like two very different teams this year. We've got the 3-0 Panthers at home, who are averaging 350 yards of total offense, 29 points per game, and are only allowing 17 points per game with a +3 turnover differential. Then we've got the 0-3 Panthers on the road, averaging 311 yards of offense, not terrible, but just 15 points per game, and they're allowing 31.6 points per game on the road with a -1 turnover differential. That is Jekyll and Hyde. True and true. Through and through. We need to know which Panthers team we're going to see this week. Now, the Jets, by contrast, have been one team all year borne out in their 0-6 record. The Jets are 28th in total offense, dead last in passing offense, and 25th in scoring offense. The defense was supposed to be the engine of the team, but it's just 19th in total defense, 23rd in rushing defense, and 28th in scoring defense. If ever there was a time for the New England running game to get going, it's here. Justin Fields just had his worst passing game of his career in London, and the only bright spot on the offense not named Breece Hall is wide receiver Garrett Wilson, who is likely going to miss this game with a hyperextended knee. In a word, woof. In 2 words, fucking woof. If we were assured of getting the home Panthers in this game, not only would this be an easy 1.5 points to lay, but Vegas wouldn't be giving us 1.5 points at all. The line might be something more like 5.5 or even 6.5. And why wouldn't it? The Panthers are clearly the better team in this matchup. But even with this one on the road, do we think the Jets are going to have the mental mindset all of a sudden to stiffen up against a 200-yard machine in Rico Dowdle, the now healthy Chuba Hubbard, and the Panthers' rushing attack? I think not. And as the Panthers ride the running game and opening up the play-action pass, I see this as a good spot for rookie wide receiver Teteroa McMillan out of Arizona to potentially rack up his second 100-yard receiving game of his rookie campaign. Sure, we could get the away Panthers this weekend, and that might result in the Jets stumbling into their first win of the year. But even in that scenario, the away Panthers might still have enough to win and cover. In the event that we get the home Panthers, this one is a cakewalk. Give me Carolina -1.5 all day long. And in our third hunch of the week, Baker Mayfield and the Bucs are 3.5-point underdogs, and I believe they're going to waltz into Detroit and put on a show with the Lions in a tight game that will ultimately be decided by a field goal or less. You all know that I love Baker Mayfield and the 5-1 NFC South leading Tampa Bay Bucs. I waxed poetic about Tampa pretty heavily last week, so I will spare you another soliloquy. The Bucs are a legit Super Bowl contender, and Baker is every bit the leading MVP candidate the Vegas lines makers say he is. Baker also finds a way to keep his offense in games. 4 of the Bucs' 6 games this season have been decided by 3 or fewer points, and Tampa Bay's won all 4 of them. The Bucs' only loss is a 31-25 decision to the Eagles in a game that could have gone either way. Mayfield is 4th in the NFL in yards, tied for 3rd in touchdowns, and tied for 6th in QB rating. Even having lost star rookie wide receiver Emeka Egbuka for an undetermined amount of time with a hamstring injury, which always seemed to linger beyond the projected recovery timeline. And even though it looks like the Bucs won't get running back Bucky Irving or wide receivers Mike Evans or Chris Godwin back, I believe in Baker. I believe in the Bucs scheme, and I believe in Tampa's receiving core of Tez Johnson, go Ducks, Cam Johnson, and Sterling Shepard to keep the passing attack on schedule in Detroit. That shows in Tampa's trends, where the Bucs are 12th in total offense, 7th in passing offense, and 6th in scoring offense. Defensively, the Bucs have bent but not broken on defense. Tampa boasts the 5th ranked rush defense in the league, but just the 21st ranked pass D and the 24th ranked scoring defense. Yes, if you picked up on that, we flipped sides of the ball. We're now talking about the Tampa defense against the Detroit offense. And let's not get it twisted. I love Detroit, and I love the Detroit offense. Maybe not as much as my little niece Clara, who's old enough to love football already, but far too young to understand why choosing to be a Lions fan is an utterly terrible decision. But I've got to say that I do have a fondness for the silver and blue under Dan Campbell, and the 4-2 Lions offer a lot to like. For my money, they're the most complete team in the NFC North, and they likely will be the division champion pending, injuries and all. The numbers back that up. They're 11th in total offense, 1 spot ahead of Tampa. They're 8th in rushing offense and 2nd in the NFL with 32.3 points per game. In their 2 home games, yes, they've played 4 of their 6 games on the road thus far. They're averaging a stunning 43 points per game. We didn't mention their passing attack, but do we need to? Talent all over the field and a great scheme for distributing the ball to guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Williams. Can't remember his first name, but it starts with a J, Williams. The Lions are also 9th in total defense, balanced between 14th in passing defense and 11th in rushing defense. Jamison Williams, that's his name. And Detroit is allowing 23.7 points per game, but just 11.5 at Ford Field. Based on these numbers, I would definitely understand one coming to the conclusion that Detroit's home field advantage is going to be the difference in this battle between 2 very well-matched teams. And, in fact, I do think Detroit will find a way to get the win on Sunday. But I also have a strong hunch that this is the Bucs' 7th game of the year decided by a field goal or less, which is good enough to cover the 3.5. All right, now that we've gotten through our 3 big hunches of the week, let's turn to our battle in Uncle Denny versus Gerald the Coin. We didn't get the Substack post up last week due to a veterinary emergency, which is looking better but not totally in the clear. Please keep your fingers crossed and your prayers up for our guy JoJo. But we defeated Gerald in resounding fashion in our Around the NFL picks. Uncle Denny, went 8-4. Gerald went 4-8. It's always good when we outperform a freaking coin. And now, on to dominating Gerald in the rest of our Week 7 games. As a quick reminder, heads is home and tails is away for our buddy Jerry. I flipped the coin for each of these beforehand so that I don't forget. Hopefully I don't forget to read them out. This would be our first perfect week if we not only make the pick, but we read them out in every single one. And we've already got the blog post up so you can see what the picks are. All right, starting with Steelers at Bengals. The Steelers are 5.5-point favorites in Cincinnati. The Bengals took a big step forward, even though they lost last week at Green Bay. They did cover the 14.5. Joe Flacco can get the ball to Cincy's talented supporting cast of Jamar Chase, of T. Higgins, of Chase Brown, and that should be enough to keep the Bengals afloat this season. Mike Tomlin's public comments this week on Cleveland's decision to trade Flacco within the division clearly resonated. Seems he thinks that was a needle mover in this division race. These AFC North matchups are usually a battle. I think the Bengals are going to make this one a battle at home too. I took the Bengals and Gerald did as well. In our second game, we've got the Rams minus 2.5 at the Jags. I'm still not quite sure what to make of the Jags this year. I really don't love Trevor Lawrence, but I was glad to see wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. step up last week, especially since it didn't cost my Hawks the W. I feel more comfortable backing the Rams, even with the cross-country travel and potentially being without Puka Nacua here as he rehabs his day-to-day ankle injury. Both teams are 4-2, but give me the Rams to get their second straight win and hand the Jags their second straight loss and cover along the way. I'm taking the Rams. Gerald is taking the Jags. In our third game, we've got the Saints plus 4.5 in Chicago against the Bears, the plucky Bears. This line came down from where it opened at Bears minus 5.5, as I thought it might when the line first opened earlier this week. The Saints are not a bad team, and Spencer Rattler is looking like a serviceable quarterback, his performance at Seattle notwithstanding. I think it potentially says something that running back Alvin Kamara reportedly has no interest in being traded to a contender at the deadline. I like the Bears, and I believe Ben Johnson has Chicago pointed in the right direction. I just think being favored by 4.5 points is still a bit too much for this matchup. I'll take the Saints in this game. Saints plus 4.5. Gerald's taking the Bears to cover the 4.5. In our fourth game, we've got the Dolphins plus 2.5 at the Browns. I would like to just skip this game if there are no objections. Okay, we'll pick it quickly. Even with the litany of bad news coming out of Miami, give us the non-rookie QB in this one. I'm taking the Fins, and so is Gerald, plus 2.5. In our next matchup, we've got the Las Vegas Raiders plus 12.5 big points at the Kansas City Chiefs. These are two teams headed in polar opposite directions. I said after last week that I was not going to be picking against Patrick Mahomes for the foreseeable future. He's too good, and the offense is back to a sufficient talent level with the return of Xavier Worthy. And now that wide receiver Rashee Rice, who is arguably the most talented player in the Chiefs supporting cast, is back from suspension, that should only help elevate the Chiefs' already buzzing offense to another level. The Raiders, meanwhile, suck. I usually don't back double-digit favorites, but I am not going against Mahomes in this spot. I'm taking the Chiefs, and so is Gerald. Next, we've got the Eagles minus 1.5 at the Vikings. And for me, whether J.J. McCarthy comes back or not this week, the Vikings offense is probably going to remain in a bit of transition. If he's not, I don't trust Carson Wentz against this Eagles D, especially with Jalen Carter expected to play. If J.J. McCarthy does come back, I think it's going to take him 2 to 3 weeks to get everything back in a rhythm while he's at the controls. I do think that Jalen Carter makes a difference in this game. I mentioned his name. I think he's a wrecking force in the front seven. I think the Eagles are going to cover the 1.5. Vegas isn't sure. I'm not entirely sure. Gerald isn't entirely sure, but he also takes the Eagles. We've got the Giants next up, plus 7.5 points at the Broncos. And I was this close to taking the under in this game as one of our 3 hunches of the week. I do have a hunch it will go under the 40.5 total. I have less of a hunch on the spread, though. The Giants have one of the best front fours in all of football. The Broncos are great everywhere on defense. The Broncos offense isn't trying to blow anybody out, but if it happens, they'll take it. I think this one could be a touchdown or less if Jackson Dart plays this game end to end and survives the hits he's likely to take from this devastating Bronco defense. But if Jackson Dart goes out and hustle bustle Russell Wilson has to fill in, I could see the Giants covering. But we won't bank on the injury this week. I'm going to take the Giants. Gerald is going to take the Broncos. All right, couple more games to go. We've got the Colts plus 1.5 at the Chargers. And I know that the Chargers are really beat up, but they are going to be ready for this game. LA plays really solid defense, and they have plenty of tape on what Daniel Jones, Jonathan Taylor, and the Colts offense are going to try and do on Sunday. I really love what we're seeing from Colts tight end Tyler Warren, and I really want to take the Colts here because they have been such a fun story this season. But I think that there's going to be some regression to the mean this week on the road in LA. Give me the Chargers minus 1.5. Gerald is on the Colts. All right, Commanders minus 1.5 in an NFC East battle at the Cowboys. Another 1.5 spread, which means this is another game where Vegas is totally uncertain who the winner will be. Dak is on fire, though, and the Cowboys haven't notched a win in Jerry World since September 14th over the Giants. Jaden Daniels and the Commanders have played well this year, but I'll take the Cowboys to get back on track at home. Cowboys minus 1.5. Gerald is backing the Commanders. The Packers minus 6.5 are headed to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. And I have to ask, which Packers team are we going to get here? Which Cardinals team are we going to get here? Who the hell knows this year? If I knew this would be Jacoby Brissett under center for the Cards, I'd probably be taking them at home. But we don't know that, and Kyler Murray is a total crapshoot. It's just a touchdown. Jordan Love, Matthew Golden, and the Green Bay offense should be able to cover that, right? I'll take the Packers. Gerald's on the Cards. Then we've got the Falcons plus 2.5 at the bruised and beaten Niners. This is San Francisco's first opportunity to figure out what their defense looks like without Fred Warner in the middle. They'll need to figure it out fast because 3-2 Atlanta is playing really good football at the moment, coming off consecutive home wins over Buffalo and Washington. The Niners are 4-2, and they've Houdini'd multiple wins as injuries have once again piled up this year. As a Seahawks fan, I want to see the Niners at full strength because I want every win over San Francisco to mean as much as humanly possible. But the Niners aren't even close to full strength on either side of the ball, and while that 30-0 loss at Carolina still sticks in the back of my mind, I'm taking Atlanta here, plus the 2.5. Gerald is taking the Niners. All right, and in our final Monday night game of the week, we've got the Texans plus 3.5 at the Seahawks. I'll make this one easy. I'm taking the Seahawks. I thought this line would be -4.5 or higher. Houston's only road win this year is over the corpse that was the Baltimore Ravens 2 weeks ago. And they did it 44-10. I'm still not impressed. Sure, they've had a bye to get healthy and prepare for Seattle, but the Seahawks have a lot of momentum in every phase of the game right now. This is going to be a big Monday nighter for Seattle, which is 31-13 all time on Monday night and 7-3 in their last 10. Give me the Hawks -3.5. Gerald closes it out by taking the Texans, and that's all we've got for you this week. Thanks again for tuning in. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Have a great week, y'all, and may the betting gods bless your picks.